Hey everybody, my name is Jakara Lewis. One second. All right, hey everybody, my name is Jakara Lewis, and I am the author of the Kiss It series TEAS Math Edition, which is a workbook that I created in order to better assist you guys with prepping for the math portion of the TEAS test. So far, we are on video number 3. I was about to do 6 again, but we're on video number 3. So what I'm doing is I'm going to post a series of 15 videos, which touches on every single section that's in. Well, every single topic that's included on the math section of the TEAS, just to give you guys a couple tips and tricks and to show you guys a few examples to help you along the way. These videos are guided by my book. The book includes over 1,400 practice questions, 2 full-length practice tests, as well as a diagnostic test that kind of helps you to get in the groove of studying. I know that math gives you guys trouble all the time, so what I like to do is I like to kiss it, which is keep it super simple, keep everything master between 1 and 3 steps so that it's easy for you to retain. And that's the word that I'm always going to use in every video is retention, because retention is so important when it comes to math, because you guys have to be able to retain and apply, meaning that if you try to put it in that short-term memory, i.e. trying to cram, you're more likely to forget it. And that's why some people have so many issues with passing their tests. All right, so if we look at comparing and ordering rational numbers, so what I do with every single topic is I break it down in terms of different things that you may see in reference to what they expect you to do. So for comparing and ordering rational numbers, sometimes people delve too deep into the idea of rational numbers. They're not asking you to define rational numbers. You're not having to do it to that particular extent. You're just comparing and ordering. So simply put, you guys have to know how to look at a data set. Given a data set, you have to be able to identify which value is the largest. You have to be able to identify which value is the smallest. You also have to know how to arrange values in ascending order, and that's just least to greatest. Please make sure you guys know the vocabulary, because that is a word that they will use, and I don't want you to get it mixed up, because again, I feel like this is a question that's a given, meaning that it's very easy for you to be able to master, so you should give yourself that point automatically, because there's no reason for you to miss it. You also have to know how to arrange values in descending order, which is from greatest to least. Now, I know at first glance, it sounds like, hey, I can do that. I can put numbers in order from least to greatest, the greatest to least, or I can choose the largest or the smallest number, and a lot of you can, but the twist is that they're going to give you numbers in different forms, so that's where the rational part comes in. So you may get percents, you may get fractions, you may get radicals, you may get decimals, and you have to compare all of these particular things. Now, if you guys noted, every video that I do, I tell you guys that these skills build on themselves, which means that when you learn the first skill of rounding and estimating, we rolled into our second skill, which was converting fractions, decimals, and percents. And of course, you had to know how to round. We did our conversions. Now we're comparing the order and rational numbers, and that's going to bring in that skill of converting fractions, decimals, and percents, because the key is getting all of your numbers into the same, what's the word? Like the same form, so that it's easier for you to be able to compare. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And of course, for those of you who are watching, if anybody has any questions, or if you double back later and watch it, you can just drop them in the comments, and I will be sure to respond to you accordingly. All right, so when we talk about kiss it, right? And I always say we're going to break it down into 1 or 2 steps. The easiest thing for you to do is, given certain values, is to convert everything to decimals. Normally, that's the easiest thing for you to be able to achieve in the shortest amount of time. So I'm going to give you guys an example problem, and then we will go from there. All right, so if we look at our example problem, we have 2.356. We have 2.355, we have 7/3, and we have 16/6. So then looking at this, if the question says identify the largest value, we wouldn't be able to do it in this particular form, because I have whole numbers and decimals here, and I have fractions here. So what you're going to have to do is, when you see problems like this and they're asking you to compare or to identify the value that's the largest or the smallest. Your trigger, and a trigger means that you trained yourself to know what to do as soon as you see a problem. Your trigger should be to convert everything to decimals. That way it's so much easier for you to be able to compare. So if these are already in the form of decimals, I'm going to focus on my two fractions. And if you guys remember from our previous skills, so remember how I said the converting fractions and decimals, that was a hot topic. It's a sub skill that you guys are going to have to use on multiple occasions throughout multiple topics. You will remember that in order to convert a fraction to a decimal, you just divide your top number by your bottom number. Again, vocabulary is not that essential to this test. As long as you know how to execute the problems skill-wise, you'll be fine. So if I do 7 divided by 3, that's going to give me 2.3 repeating. If I do 16 divided by 6, that's going to give me 2.6 repeating. All right, so if I bring all my decimals down, I have 2.356, I have 2.355, I have 2.333, and I have 2.66. So now this is a good scenario for you guys to be in, because this is what I want you guys to notice. Now you see how all of these numbers start with the number 2? That means we're going to go directly to our decimals to be able to compare, okay? Sometimes people get in that boat and they get a little confused and they don't understand what to do when they all start with a 2, because then it's like, oh, it's basically the same number. Technically, it's not, because these decimals are going to be what makes the difference. So I always tell people, you see how we're dealing with 3 digits? You compare them as if they were whole numbers. So I would look at this as 356. I would look at this as it's 355, 333, 666. So of course, out of those 3 numbers, we know that this is going to be our largest value. Now when you answer your question, they're always going to put it back in the original form. So you won't see your decimal form as an answer choice. You have to remember, what did you convert from? So that's why I always tell people to write everything down. They provide you guys with scratch paper. Don't try to skimp. Don't try to rush through. Take your time and answer the question, because you don't want to miss it. So we know that our answer is going to be 16/6. Okay? So again, another good sub skill, because we just compared decimals. So make sure when you guys are comparing decimals, make sure it's the same number of digits throughout. If you guys notice, 7/3, that's 2.3 repeating. But I stopped at the 3rd digit because I already knew that the decimals that they gave me already had 3 digits. Same thing here. I knew that this was 2.6 repeating. So I stopped at the 3rd digit because I knew I was comparing it to numbers that already had 3 digits. And you always want to keep that in mind, okay? All right, so let's just say if we're in the same boat and we have 1/3, 1/2, 1/8, and 1/4. Now this time I'm going to say, okay, identify the smallest value in this subset. Now some people, there are a variety of different ways that you can do this. I always like to kind of keep it simple because I don't want you to overthink it. So with the method of comparing irrational numbers, my go-to is always to change everything to decimals. I never really want to give you guys so many different ways to solve it, because I don't want you to get to your test and you're like, oh, how is I supposed to do this? You should know when you see comparing and ordering rational numbers, convert, decimal. Super simple. Is this the only method that you can do this? No. But this is the method that I recommend. If you are already well versed in another method that gets you the correct answer each time, then don't worry about it. Just make sure you continuously practice. So they give us 1/3, 1/2, 1/8, and 1/4. So I'm going to change all of these to decimals, and then I'm going to compare them. And again, we know to convert a fraction to a decimal, we're going to divide the top number by the bottom number. So for 1/3, that's going to be 0.3 repeated. I'm just going to start with 0.3 until I compare all of my other decimals to kind of see where it leaves me at. I know that 1/2, that's going to be 0.5. I know that 1/8 is what? I need a calculator. I think it's 0.125. I believe so. Nope. Yeah. I think it's 0.125. Let me double check that real quick. I don't even have a calculator with me. Jeez. I believe it's 0.125 though. Yeah. All right. So that's 0.125. And then 1/4 is 0.25. All right, so if I look at my decimals, remember what I told you guys, I can't compare them because they don't all have the same number of digits. I noticed that this is the longest decimal. It has 3 digits. Now for my fractions that stopped, non-repeating, like 0.5, I'm going to add 2 zeros behind it as placeholders. It's not going to change the value of my number. If I look at 0.25, I'm going to add 1 zero as a placeholder. So again, I want to be able to compare 3 digits. Now, 1/3 is 0.3 repeating. So repeating whenever you see the symbol, that means that the same number goes on and on and on forever. So I know I'm going to add 2 more 3s because again, I'm looking to have 3 digits behind my decimal so that I can compare. So now, remember I told you the trick. Look at your numbers as whole numbers. So I have 333, I have 500, I have 125, and I have 250. So out of all of these values, which one is going to be the smallest? And of course, that would be the 125. Now remember, for your answer choices, you have to convert it back to its original form. So that means that the answer will be 1/8, not 0.125. And make sure you guys don't make that mistake on your test, because I don't want you to get into a boat to where you think you got something wrong and you really got it right. You just didn't complete it all the way. Okay? All right, moving on. All right, so before we get into our next sub skill, which is arranging in ascending and descending orders, I want to touch on negative numbers real quick. So people tend to have a really tough time comparing negative numbers, which is understandable because it's completely the opposite of what we've always done with positive numbers. So for example, if I have negative 14 and I have -2, right? And we want to compare these two values. So I'm trying to figure out, well, which one is the biggest, which one is the smallest? If you think of negative numbers in terms of money, right? Debt. That's definitely going to help you. So think about it. If your friend owes you $14 and another one of your friend owes you $2, who's the person that holds the most value? So think about it. If one of your friends owes you $14 and somebody else owes you $2, who holds the most value in that situation? Hey, how you doing? It's gonna be this person. So basically, what you guys need to understand is that when we're dealing with negative numbers, the smaller the number, the bigger its value. So in this case, -2 is greater than -14. I know most of you guys say, well, this is 14 and this is 2. Right, but because we're dealing with negative values, this is going to lessen the value of the number. So the further to the left the number goes away from 0, the smaller the number actually, the smaller the number actually gets. Okay? So if we use another example, if we had -18 and -18.5, and I said, okay, let's compare these. Which one of these answers would be greater? So technically, I'm looking for the smaller number. I know that 18 is smaller than 18.5, so in turn, this is going to be the greater value. That's something that you guys are going to have to learn. Make a mental note. Make sure you practice comparing and ordering negative numbers, because you may get a question and it may ask you, well, identify the largest value in this data set and it's all negative numbers. Arrange this data set in ascending order and it's all negative numbers. I need you to be able to compare. I need you to put yourself in a position to make yourself understand this particular topic, okay? All right, so going into our next example, I'm going to give you guys a data set and we're going to arrange it in ascending order. So ascending means from least to greatest. Make sure you guys know the difference between ascending and descending. I always think about stairs. Like if you ascend upstairs, you're going up. So you're going from a small point to a low point to a high point. If you descend downstairs, you're going from a high point to a low point. It's the same thing with numbers. So if I give you guys 1/2, 68%, 51/100, and the square root of 2. All right, so these are our 4 values, right? and I said let's put them in order from least to greatest, which is ascending order. So what did I say the trigger is? The trigger is to always convert everything to decimals. That's the easiest route to go. That's not the route that you have to go. It's not an end all be all, but I recommend that you pick one method that works every single time. And converting to decimals is going to work with any type of problem they give you. So that's why I always recommend it. So I know if I have a fraction, in order to convert a fraction to a decimal, I divide my top number by my bottom number. And again, this is the sub skill of converting fractions, decimals, and percents. If you missed the video, it's in the previous video that I posted yesterday. Please make sure you guys go back and check that out. We have a percentage. In order to go from a percent to a decimal, we're going to move our decimal 2 places to the left. We already have a decimal, and of course with the square root, we know, we saw this skill in estimating and rounding. Utilize your calculator. You hit the number 2 in your fourth function. You hit the square root sign, and that's going to give you your number. So when I have 1/2, that's going to convert to 0.5. 68% is going to convert to 0.68. We have 51/100ths, and the square root of 2 is going to give us 1.41. Of course, we cut that off. So we have 0.5, 0.68, 0.51, 0.41. Of course, I'm not using technical terms at this particular moment. Now, if we notice, all of our digits have 2 numbers after the decimal. So what I want to do is I'm going to add a number here as a placeholder. All right, so we're going in ascending order. So we're going to figure, okay, out of all these values, which one is going to be the smallest? Well, I already know, since this has a 1 in the front and these don't, technically they have zeros, this is going to be my greatest value. So this is going to go last. And you want to put it back in its original form. So I know, let me see if I can draw this upside down. I did. Square root of 2 is going to be last. All right, now we're comparing these. So I have 50, I have 68, and I have 51. Okay, well, I know 50 is the smallest, so 1/2 is going to go first. That's my smallest value. All right, I know 51 would be next, so 0.51 would be our next value. And then 68, of course, would be our next value. Did I do that right? Oh, yeah, I did. Did I? Yeah. All right, so as you guys can see, one more time, anytime they ask you guys to compare in order, whether we're going from least to greatest, greatest to least, whether we're choosing the biggest or the smallest number, you guys should always go to decimals. Convert everything to decimals. It's a sub skill you guys should have already mastered. Compare and then put them back in their original form, okay? So don't leave them in decimal form. You have to convert back to its original form. That's why I write everything down. Everything gets stacked on top of each other. So in the event that you make a mistake, it's so much easier to kind of see where you went wrong, you know, versus writing all over the paper. And that's something that you guys want to work on as well as you're studying. Oh, I want to make, I don't know if y'all, I hope y'all was able to actually see the answers at the bottom. I wasn't sure. Most of them. You doing all right back there?
Yeah.
What you think?
I like it. I'm trying to take a picture.
It's probably dark back there. You probably have to go to the mirror. Oh, it's cute.
I know, but
you don't like that part right there. I like the color on you though.
I love it.
All right, so let's do one more practice problem. It's going to focus primarily, we're going to mix positive and negatives just to make sure you guys kind of got the good jewels that I just gave you guys on comparing positive and negative numbers. All right, so let's say if I gave you guys 5 values, negative 3.5, negative 3, 0, negative 7, and 3.5. And the question says, arrange the values in descending order. So we know that to descend means to go from greatest to least. So because these are already in the same form, we don't have to do any type of conversion. But we have to remember the difference between positive and negative numbers. So a positive number is always going to be greater than a negative. Even if I have 1 and negative 50. 1 is always going to be greater because it's positive. So let's focus on our positive. So we have 0 and we have 3.5. So I know that 3.5, of course, is greater than 0. So that's going to be my first value. So that's gone. All right, I know 0 is my only other positive, so that's gonna be next. All right, so now I have negative 3.5, negative 3, and negative 7. So what did I tell you guys? The smaller the negative number, the bigger its value. So if I'm comparing, negative 3 is definitely gonna be my next value. All right. Negative 3.5, negative 7. Negative 3.5 is smaller than negative 7, so not, well, you know what I mean. Like 3.5 is smaller than 7. All right, and then negative 7. And this will be our values in descending order. All right, so if you're just tuning in, today's video focused on comparing and ordering rational numbers. You guys are going to be expected to do a number of things given this particular topic. You guys are going to have to know how to identify the smallest value given a data set. You guys are going to have to know how to identify the largest value given a data set. You guys are also going to know have to know how to arrange values in ascending order, which is the same thing as least to greatest, and descending order, which is greatest to least as well. Make sure you guys are familiar with those key vocabulary terms, because I do not want you to get to your test and miss the question just because of a small misstep like this. Of course, if you're having trouble finding resources, the book is available. You guys can inbox me. So far, the minimum score that we found is a 75%, and the highest score we found is 100%, given at least 2 to 3 weeks to study with the book. Again, it has over 1,400 practice questions. It has 2 full-length practice tests, and it also has a diagnostic test as well. Make sure you guys are taking the time. Make sure you guys are taking the time to actually study and prep in order for you guys to be able to retain. And I'll be back. I won't be back tomorrow. I'll be back Wednesday with our next video, which is converting within and between metric systems. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys give me feedback on my videos, because I'm prepping for my YouTube. So of course, any type of feedback is definitely greatly appreciated. And I'll see you guys on Wednesday.